Gained a home. I had lost an abusive daughter, but found one in healing. I had lost the false peace of submission, but gained the true peace that comes from mutual respect. And above all, I had discovered a truth that now defined my life. It is never too late to begin again, to protect your rights, to reclaim your worth, and to demand the respect you have always deserved. When my son said he wasn't expecting me for Thanksgiving, I smiled. Then I brought a pecan pie anyway. The night air in Charleston smelled of salt and roasted pecans as I walked up the brick path toward their house, the one I'd helped them buy. My reflection blinked back at me from the windows, surrounded by laughter that wasn't mine. Claire opened the door, gold sequins flashing like warning lights. "Oh," she said too loud. "You actually came!" She turned her head toward the dining room. "Ryan, your mother decided to surprise us." 12 people turned. Champagne glasses froze mid-air. My son stood at the end of the table, jaw tight. "Mom, we thought—" Claire cut him off, smiling wide for her audience. "We thought she'd spend the evening at her little cottage, surrounded by her medals." A few guests chuckled. "You really brought a pie? That's adorable. We have a caterer." I set the pie on the marble counter she'd chosen with my credit card. "Tradition," I said softly, "still has flavor." Her mother, Evelyn, peered over her glass. "You were in the Air Force, correct? Logistics? My husband says women like that were very structured. Hard to live with, though." Claire laughed, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. "She still runs her life like a briefing. Color-coded labels for everything, even grief." The table laughed with her. I felt the sound land like shrapnel. Ryan looked at the floor. "I didn't realize discipline was such a flaw," I said. Claire's eyes gleamed. "It is when it makes people uncomfortable. You see, not everyone wants to be managed by a general." The word general came out like an insult. I took a breath. The compass in my pocket pressed cool metal into my palm. North never moved. "Don't misunderstand," she continued sweetly. "We appreciate everything you've done, the down payment, the renovations, the chandelier. But this is our home now, our rules, our guests." Her father raised his glass. "You raised a fine man, Mrs. Whitaker. It's time to let him go." Someone murmured approval. My humiliation was complete and silent. I glanced at the chandelier above them, the one I'd bought after my husband died, thinking it would light their new beginnings. Tonight, it illuminated strangers and shame. I straightened my jacket. "You're right," I said quietly. "Letting go takes practice." I pulled a blank place card from the stack beside the napkins. In careful block letters I wrote, "Paid in full, property of Whitaker legacy." Then I slid it beneath the centerpiece. Claire's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" "Labeling things," I said. "It's my habit." Ryan finally spoke. "Mom, please don't make this worse." "Oh, son," I said, still calm. "I'm making it clear." I turned toward the door. Claire's voice followed, shrill now. "Next time, call before you drop by uninvited. Some traditions die for a reason." I stopped at the threshold. "And some survive because they earned it." Outside, the air was cool and disciplined. I could hear laughter return behind me, forced and brittle, the kind people use to patch cracks they don't want others to see. I took out my phone, scrolling to a number labeled Major Samuel Pike, retiree. When he answered, his voice was gravel and warmth. "Whitaker?" "Major," I said. "I need an amendment to the family estate. Tonight." "Tonight?" he asked. "Thanksgiving?" "Justice doesn't take holidays." A long pause. Then his answer. "Send the file." I slipped the compass from my pocket, the silver catching moonlight. I turned it until north aligned with the streetlight ahead. "They called it letting go," I whispered. "I call it recalculating coordinates." As I walked to my car, the laughter inside thinned into silence. Tomorrow, my $2.4 million estate would have new coordinates, ones that no longer included them. The car heater hummed low as I drove down the quiet Charleston street. The magnolias outside glowed faint under the streetlights, still as soldiers at attention. My hands didn't shake. They hadn't shaken in years, not in storms, not in war, and certainly not because of a spoiled woman in a gold dress. I pulled into the empty parking lot beside the pier. The sea smelled of iron and salt. I rolled down the window, let the wind strip away the perfume of their house. The compass chain was warm against my skin. North pointed home, to me. The phone buzzed once before Samuel answered. "Major Pike," he said, voice thick with bourbon and late hours. "You calling to wish me a happy Thanksgiving?" "No," I said. "I'm calling to move money." There was a pause. "You're serious?" "Serious enough to amend a $2.4 million estate tonight." That woke him up. "What happened?" "My daughter-in-law decided tradition is embarrassing. My son decided silence is easier. They both decided I should disappear before dinner. I think it's time they live with that decision." He whistled softly. "You finally done playing diplomat?" "Completely." "Then tell me what you need." "Transfer the Savannah house and the stock portfolio from joint to private trust. My name only. No survivorship clause." "Effective date?" "Tonight. Recorded under Clause 7, breach of filial conduct." Samuel laughed low. "That's not a legal term." "It will be when I'm done." I could hear papers shifting, his keyboard tapping. "This'll cause a storm when they find out." "Good," I said. "Let them feel the weather for once." I watched the waves slap the pier, steady and rhythmic. Somewhere behind me, fireworks cracked in the distance, early celebrations from people with nothing to lose. I envied them for half a second, then didn't. Samuel's voice returned, sharper now. "All right, I've frozen the joint accounts. They won't notice until after the weekend. You sure about this, Nadine? You always play the long game." "This is the long game," I said. "They thought I was decoration. They forgot I wrote the checks." He chuckled. "You always did like precision strikes." "Send the confirmation to my secure inbox. Label it Revised Compass." "That's poetic." "It's practical," I said. "Poetry doesn't hold up in probate court." A soft ping sounded on my phone. Email received. "Nadine?" Samuel said, his tone turning softer. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not. Anger burns too hot. I prefer cold math." "Cold math?" "Every chandelier, every marble counter, every mortgage payment, they can keep the furniture, but not the foundation." He let out a breath. "I'll file at sunrise." "Do it," I said, and ended the call. The night had gone quiet again, except for the wind against the glass. I opened the glove box and took out a folder marked Deeds, Pending Review. Inside were copies of every signed check, every proof of ownership I'd ever kept. Claire once told me my filing system was obsessive. She was right. Obsession builds walls no one can breach. My phone lit up again. Ryan's name. I stared at it, the same boy who used to bring me screws and bolts in the garage while his father built ships from memory. He'd become a man who couldn't stand up in his own dining room. I let the call ring out. The next message came seconds later. "Mom, Claire says you embarrassed her. Please don't make things worse." I smiled. My reflection in the windshield didn't look angry. It looked awake. I typed one sentence back. "Tell Claire the estate is no longer her concern." Then I turned the phone off and slipped the compass into my pocket. The pier creaked under the tide, slow and certain. I started the car and drove, headlights carving through the dark like a blade. By dawn, the $2.4 million estate would belong solely to me, and by sunset, they'd realize Thanksgiving had given them exactly what they wished for: distance. By morning, Charleston was all light and performance, white tablecloths, polished silver, people pretending to be decent. I walked into the Harbor Club at exactly 9, same time Claire always bragged about her family brunch tradition. They were there. Ryan, pale. Claire, perfect as porcelain. Evelyn and her husband already holding court, telling waiters which champagne belonged on the right tables. Claire looked up first. Her smile froze. "Mother Whitaker," she said, the words tasting like vinegar. "Didn't expect to see you here." "That's becoming a theme," I said. Evelyn leaned forward. "Nadine, dear, We were just discussing the house, how Ryan and Claire plan to expand. A nursery, perhaps? Claire nodded eagerly. Yes, once the estate stabilizes, we'll refinance. We're meeting your accountant next week to finalize access. I sat down across from her, calm as glass. About that, I said, you might want to call him first. Her eyes narrowed. Why? Because as of midnight, the estate no longer concerns you. Ryan blinked. Mom, what does that mean? It means, I said, unfolding a single paper from my coat pocket, the trust is now private, non-transferable, non-marital, irrevocable. Claire laughed, sharp and fake. That's impossible. We're co-beneficiaries. You were, I said, until your Thanksgiving performance. The color drained from her face. Evelyn frowned. Surely you're joking. You can't just... I can, I said. And I did, legally. You'll find your access cards declined before dessert. A waiter arrived with mimosas, trembling slightly as the tension filled the room. I took one, sipped slowly. Cheers, I said. To clarity. Ryan rubbed his temples. Mom, you can't just freeze everything without talking to us. I tried talking, I said. You left me at the door. Claire slammed her glass down. You had no right! I looked her dead in the eye. No obligation. Big difference. People from nearby tables began to glance over. The sound of forks paused. Claire's perfect voice cracked. You think this little stunt makes you powerful? No, I said. It makes me free. She leaned forward, whispering with venom. You'll regret crossing me, old woman. Claire, I said, keeping my tone surgical, you should read the new clause in the deed, breach of filial conduct. It applies to anyone who forgets where their home came from. Evelyn's husband coughed. You can't just invent... I can, I said. My lawyer already filed it. Ryan's phone buzzed. He looked down, eyes widening. The account's locked. Effective immediately, I said. Claire snatched the phone. You vindictive witch. Careful, I said. Defamation from a woman funded by my signature doesn't carry much weight. She stood, trembling with fury, her pearls shaking against her throat. You can't humiliate us in public. I set my glass down, perfectly centered on the napkin. You did that yourselves. I'm just the audience. Then I stood, placed the folded paper on the table, and nodded to Ryan. Next time you choose silence over spine, remember who paid for your voice. The room had gone utterly quiet. Even the waiter froze mid-pour. I adjusted the silver compass on my neck and walked out through the sunlight. Outside, the breeze off the harbor felt clean, like the start of a new command. Behind me, Claire shouted something, her words lost under the gulls. I didn't turn around. I had one more stop to make. The bank. The bank doors opened with a hiss of cool air and polished silence. People in tailored suits turned to look, because I didn't belong to their morning routine. I belonged to the paperwork that kept their lights on. The manager, Mr. Langford, stood the moment he saw me. Mrs. Whitaker, a pleasure. I just received a rather urgent notice from Major Pike's office. Good, I said. Let's make it official. He guided me toward his glass office, all chrome and order. Outside the window, Charleston glittered. Perfect, expensive, and hollow. Claire and Ryan would be finishing brunch by now, realizing they'd been cut off in real time. Langford cleared his throat. Before we proceed, your daughter-in-law called earlier. She said there's been a misunderstanding, something about shared access. Ah, I said. The misunderstanding was thinking she had any. He blinked. So, we are confirming full transfer of control to you alone? Correct. Execute the freeze, reissue the checks, and mark every line item, owner of record, N. Whitaker. He nodded quickly, clicking through his monitor. You understand, this will lock all linked accounts, including their cards, their mortgage, their business credit. Yes. Then do it, I said. He hesitated. Mrs. Whitaker, forgive me, but your daughter-in-law is persuasive. She's already left a message for our board, claiming this amendment was made under duress. Duress? I smiled. Tell the board that discipline isn't duress. It's design. He couldn't hide his grin. Understood. As he typed, I pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photo of my late husband, Maria's medals beside his folded flag. I set it on the desk. He taught me to never sign anything without reading the fine print. Now I write it. Langford looked down at the papers printing from the machine. Transfer complete. Confirmation stamp? I took the notary seal myself, pressed it down with both hands until the paper whispered its approval. The red circle bled into the parchment. Final, silent, perfect. The door opened suddenly. Claire stormed in, heels snapping against marble. Ryan trailed behind, pale as ash. "You can't do this," she said, voice too loud for the quiet room. "This estate belongs to the family." "It does," I said evenly, "to the part that remembers what family means." She stepped closer. "You've ruined us. Do you know what the papers will say?" "Probably that I acted legally." "Legally?" She laughed, brittle. "You call betrayal legal?" I met her glare without blinking. "I call betrayal expensive." Langford cleared his throat, nervous. "Mrs. Whitaker, should I—" "No," I said. "Let her finish." Claire's voice broke. "You old tyrant! You think this makes you noble? You'll die alone, and no one will even claim your body." Ryan flinched. The room went still. I stood. "I survived 20 years of deployments, Mrs. Donovan Whitaker. You think loneliness scares me?" She tried to speak, but I kept going. "You wanted power. You mistook generosity for weakness. Now you'll learn the difference between inheritance and dependence." Then I turned to Langford. "File the hard copy under Compass Revision, Charleston Vault, immediate effect." He stamped the final page. Thud. The sound echoed like a gavel. Claire lunged for the document. "This isn't over." "No," I said, gathering my gloves. "It's just recorded." Ryan tried one last time. "Mom, please, don't do this in front of everyone." "Son," I said quietly, "you already did." I picked up the compass from my coat pocket and placed it flat on the counter. "North stays true," I said, "even when people don't." Then I walked past them, through the lobby, through the whispers, into the clear Charleston sunlight. Behind me, Claire's voice cracked into something small, something I didn't need to hear. Outside, the wind off the harbor lifted my hair, and I smiled for the first time since Thanksgiving. The estate was safe, the record was sealed, and justice, at last, had a receipt. Charleston's air was thick with perfume and pretense that morning. By 9 o'clock, every cafe along King Street was buzzing about one thing: me. "The Whitaker scandal," they whispered over lattes. "The veteran widow who froze her own son's estate." I didn't correct them. I let the truth do its job. At 10 a.m., Claire and her parents hosted a charity brunch at the Harbor View Club. The invitation had gone out days before my legal filing. I went anyway, invited by no one, but expected by fate. The hostess hesitated when she saw me. "Mrs. Whitaker, they're already seated." "I know," I said, walking past her. The room turned to watch. Crystal glasses caught the sunlight. Claire's laugh carried across the hall until she saw me. Then silence. She stood. "What are you doing here?" "Checking on my investments," I said, glancing around the room. "You're spending from accounts that no longer exist." Evelyn's smile tightened. "Nadine, dear, this is a private event. You're creating a scene." I stepped closer. "You created it when you built your lifestyle on fraud." The word fraud sliced through the air like a blade. Guests turned, pretending not to listen. Claire's voice sharpened. "You think anyone will believe you? You're a lonely old woman with no proof." I took out my phone, opened a folder labeled Thanksgiving Ledger, and tapped play. Her voice filled the room, recorded at the bank the day before. "You'll die alone, and no one will even claim your body." Gasps. One woman dropped her fork. A man at the next table muttered, "Good God." Claire's face drained of color. You can't record private conversations?" "South Carolina's single-party consent law disagrees," I said. "You should have read the statutes before you spoke. Ryan tried to stand. "Mom, please, this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," I said, turning toward the crowd. "This is the family that mocked a veteran widow while living off her $2.4 million estate." A journalist I'd discreetly tipped off raised her phone camera. Flash, click. Evelyn hissed, "You'll ruin us." "No," I said, calm as a firing line. "You did that when you turned gratitude into entitlement." Claire lunged for my phone. "Delete that recording." "Try," I said, stepping back. "It's already in the Chronicle's inbox." The room erupted. Half whispers, half applause. Someone muttered, "Good for her." I lifted my chin slightly. "For the record," I said, voice steady, "I'm not vindictive. I'm precise." Evelyn's husband slammed his napkin down. "You've humiliated our family." I met his glare. "You mistook comfort for power. Power answers to paper and seal." I placed a sealed envelope on their table. "That's the Chronicle's copy of your fake trust statements. You can read them before the morning edition does." Claire's hand trembled as she reached for it. "You'll regret this." "Perhaps," I said, "but you'll remember it." Then I turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, always verify who signs your checks." Laughter rippled, low and dangerous. I walked out to the sound of camera shutters. Behind me, Claire shouted my name, her voice breaking between rage and disbelief. Outside, the wind off the harbor was sharp, cutting through my coat, but it felt like oxygen. The city skyline gleamed like glass under sunlight, clean, cold, and honest. I checked my phone. A notification popped up. The Charleston Chronicle, exclusive. Veteran widow reclaims 2.4 M estate from PR heiress. Front page, photo attached. Me, walking out of the club, compass chain visible. I smiled. Justice served, hot, on fine china. Then I slipped the compass back into my pocket and headed home. The city could finish my story for me. By evening, Charleston was trembling with embarrassment. The Donovan's name had become a punchline. At the club, waiters whispered it. On social media, hashtags bloomed. #Compass Woman, #Thanksgiving, Audit, #Justice Served. I didn't post a word. I didn't have to. At 6 sharp, my doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw Ryan. Alone. Shoulders hunched, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. Behind him, the porch light threw his shadow long across the steps, like a boy returning after a storm. I opened the door but didn't smile. "Mom," he said softly, "Claire wants to host dinner tonight. She says she wants to apologize." I studied his face. The last time he'd spoken that calmly, he was asking me to co-sign his mortgage. "She wants to apologize," I repeated, slow, measuring. "At your house?" He nodded. "She invited Major Pike, too, said she wants to make things right." My instincts clicked. Claire never did anything out of remorse, only out of calculation. I glanced at the compass hanging by the door, its silver glint steady. "Tell her I'll be there at 8. His relief was visible. "Thank you, Mom. It means a lot." "It will," I said quietly. After he left, I poured tea and opened my binder, the Whitaker legacy file. Each document sealed, stamped, dated, a map of her downfall. I slipped the compass into my pocket and left. The Donovan Whitaker house looked like a stage, chandeliers blazing, windows wide open, photographers lurking across the street. Of course, she'd invited the press. As I entered, Claire greeted me at the door, smile rehearsed, eyes cold. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said sweetly, "I thought we'd put the ugliness behind us. Thanksgiving should bring people together." I glanced at the silverware, polished for display, not sincerity. "Then why the photographers?" She flinched. "Just lifestyle coverage for the paper, to show we're united." "Ah," I said. "Optics before honesty." At the table sat Ryan, pale and silent. Evelyn and Charles avoided eye contact. Claire raised her glass. "To forgiveness and family." I lifted mine halfway. "To transparency." Halfway through the meal, she leaned closer. "You've had your moment." Everyone pities you now. But this, she gestured around, this is still my life. I'll rebuild the firm. I'll reclaim the trust. You can't erase me. I smiled faintly. You're right. I can't erase you, but I can make sure no bank will fund you. Her fork froze. What? I opened my purse and slid an envelope across the table. Notice of audit and fraud inquiry, filed this afternoon. The IRS found discrepancies in your company's charitable deductions. You may want to call your accountant before dessert. The blood drained from her face. You wouldn't. I didn't, I said. You did, when you falsified donation receipts under my estate's name. She looked at Ryan, panic flickering. You knew? He whispered, No. God, Claire, what did you do? Cameras flashed from the hallway. Samuel had arrived with 2 reporters. Claire stood, shouting, You set me up! I rose too, calm as the tide. No, Mrs. Donovan Whitaker, I documented you. Evelyn grabbed her daughter's hand. Claire, stop! But it was too late. Her voice rose, cracking under the weight of panic. You think this makes you a hero? You'll die alone with your stupid compass. I leaned in just enough for her to hear. Better alone than owned. The reporters captured every word. Then I turned to Samuel. Major, the paperwork? He handed me a single document, official seal, gleaming red, filed and public. I faced Claire one last time. You wanted an audience. Congratulations, you have one. She collapsed into her chair as the cameras kept clicking. I walked out into the cool Charleston air, the compass steady against my palm. Behind me, the mansion buzzed with chaos, voices rising, plates clattering. Ahead, the harbor wind smelled of salt and justice. I whispered, Operation complete, and kept walking. The next morning, Charleston woke to headlines that glittered like broken glass. PR heiress under federal inquiry after Thanksgiving scandal. Veteran widow exposes 2.4 M trust fraud. Every cafe whispered my name. Every television replayed last night's footage. Claire's public collapse, my calm exit. The flash of my silver compass catching light like a medal. At 7 sharp, I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the street below. Even the air felt cleaner. For the first time in months, it smelled like peace instead of pretense. My phone vibrated nonstop. Reporters, lawyers, television producers, even 2 networks offering interviews. I ignored them all. Justice didn't need a talk show. By 8, the Charleston Chronicle released an update. IRS confirmed formal investigation into Donovan and Whitaker PR. Below, a photo showed Claire standing outside her firm, face pale, mascara streaked, clutching her phone like a weapon that had backfired. I smiled faintly. Precision, not anger, I whispered. That's how you win wars. The doorbell rang. 3 knocks, slow, measured, uncertain. Ryan. He looked 10 years older, hair unkempt, eyes rimmed red. The boy who'd once worshipped his wife now looked like a man who'd seen what love could rot into. Mom, he said quietly, I needed to see you. Come in, I said. My voice stayed even. Discipline first, compassion later. He hesitated at the doorway. The reporters won't leave us alone. Claire's parents shut themselves in. Everyone's talking about last night. They should, I said. Sunlight disinfects. He flinched. You humiliated her, Mom. No, I corrected, pouring him coffee. She humiliated herself. I just provided the lighting. He sat, fingers trembling around the mug. She says you set her up, that you destroyed everything out of revenge. I leaned back. Tell me, Ryan, who forged the donation receipts? Who claimed $80,000 in fake charitable deductions under my estate's name? He blinked. She said her accountant. Her accountant followed her instructions, I interrupted. Samuel sent copies to the IRS at noon yesterday. The investigation's already public. He went pale. She could go to prison. She'll go where arrogance belongs, I said. That's not cruelty. It's consequence. He stared down at his hands. I should have stopped her. I should have believed you. You were too busy believing in her reflection, I said softly. Now you're learning to see the glass. He looked up, shame clouding his face. She told me you were jealous of her success, that you hated her. I never hated her, I said. I just stopped financing her illusions. He winced. The bank accounts. They're all frozen. They should be. You can rebuild, Ryan. She can't. Her empire was borrowed. He laughed once, a small, bitter sound. Mom, the media's calling you ruthless. They called me that in uniform, too, I said. The word changes nothing. His expression softened. You were incredible last night. Standing there in front of everyone, calm while she screamed. It was like you'd rehearsed it. I had, I said. For 20 years. Silence filled the room. Only the old clock ticked. Then he whispered, She said you'll die alone. I met his eyes. Solitude isn't punishment, Ryan. It's peace earned. He stared at the compass on the table, the one his father had given me before deployment. Dad would have been proud. Your father believed in justice, I said. Now he has it. He swallowed hard. What happens now? Now, I said, opening a folder on the table. You start clean. Inside lay documents, new accounts, all under his name, small but honest. That's what's left of your share, I said. Legally yours. Managed properly, it'll grow. Squander it, and you'll lose everything again. He stared at the papers. After everything I did, why would you still help me? Because I'm your mother, I said, tone steady. Not your lender. His eyes glistened. I don't deserve forgiveness. No one does, I said. But they can earn respect. Start there. He nodded slowly. I filed for separation this morning, he said. Claire's gone. Her parents too. Reporters outside, cars packed, everything falling apart. Good, I said. Now you know how quickly facades crumble when truth shows up uninvited. He managed a sad smile. They said you ruined them. I didn't ruin them, I said. I held up a mirror. He leaned back, defeated. Everyone keeps asking what you'll do next. I'll drink my coffee hot for once, I said, and maybe repaint the porch. That made him laugh, really laugh for the first time in months. God, I missed this. Then don't lose it again, I said. He hesitated, then reached across the table. Mom, thank you for everything, for not giving up on me. I almost did, I admitted. But then I remembered, flight plans always allow for turbulence. He looked down at the compass again. Can I hold it? I nodded. He lifted it gently, studying the way it caught the light. Still points north, he murmured. Always does, I said. That's what truth does too. The clock chimed 9. Outside, a new day unfolded, crisp, sharp, alive. Across town, news vans still camped at the Donovans' estate. I imagined Evelyn inside, clutching pearls, Charles shouting into his phone, Claire crying into her hands. The sound of collapse was almost beautiful. Ryan stood to leave. I'll be back tomorrow, he said. Dinner this time. Just us. Bring real food, I said. Not that takeout she used to order for show. He smiled. You got it. As he left, the morning sun spilled through the doorway, washing the floor in gold. When the door clicked shut, I finally exhaled. I walked to the window, looking out at the harbor. The compass lay warm in my hand, steady as my pulse. I turned it until the needle faced north. For years, I'd let others steer me, family, pride, guilt. But not anymore. Justice wasn't a storm. It was navigation. I whispered to the quiet house. Target reached. Then I poured another cup of coffee, opened my notebook, and began to write. They mistook silence for surrender. They forgot I was trained to wait. I underlined the words twice. Outside, Charleston shimmered, wounded but awake, and somewhere across the city, the Donovans were learning what truth costs when the bill finally arrives. I raised my cup toward the window. To accuracy, I said softly, and to peace earned, not given. And then I closed the file, set down the compass, and let the sun fill the room. Spring came early that year. Charleston's air softened, the river smelled less of winter, and the magnolias opened like small white flags of surrender. I took that as a sign, not from above, but from within. The estate was safe. The investigation had ended. Claire's firm dissolved in March. Her parents' assets sold quietly under court supervision. No headlines now, just silence. The kind of silence that sounded like closure. Ryan came by every Sunday. No cameras, no tension, just him, a casserole, and conversation. The first few weeks he spoke cautiously, as if each word might break something. By April, he spoke freely. He laughed again. The guilt in his face had softened into gratitude. One morning, he brought paperwork from his new job, assistant operations manager at a logistics company. "It's not glamorous," he said, "but it's honest." "Then it's perfect," I said, signing the reference letter his boss had requested. "You finally understand the power of your own name." He smiled. "Guess I learned from the best." After he left, I walked to the Veterans Resource Center downtown. Major Pike had called last week, said they needed volunteers for a new financial literacy program for widows of servicemen. "You've got the right temperament," he'd said. Calm, sharp, unintimidated. He wasn't wrong. By noon, I was seated at a folding table with 6 women, all older, all carrying that same look, part grief, part grit. I taught them how to spot financial traps, how to read fine print, how to say no without guilt. "You speak like a soldier," one woman told me. "I was trained to survive," I said. "Now I train others." When the session ended, Samuel met me outside. "You've built something good here," he said. "I just followed the map," I replied, touching the compass in my pocket. He smiled. "Still carrying that old thing?" "It's not old," I said. "It's proof I still know where north is." That afternoon, I drove home along the harbor. The old Donovan mansion stood silent and empty, windows shuttered, garden unkempt. For a moment, I stopped across the street, watching ivy crawl over its walls like time reclaiming what pride had stolen. They'd moved out of Charleston quietly. No farewell parties, no statements, just vanished. A fitting end to a family that had confused influence with integrity. Back home, my porch light flickered. Ryan had replaced the bulb weeks ago, but I'd kept forgetting to fix the wiring. I took out my old toolkit and did it myself, steady hands tightening every screw until the light steadied into a soft, golden glow. The small things, a working porch light, a sealed bank ledger, a calm night, were now my medals. At 6, I brewed tea, the same way I always did. The scent filled the house, jasmine and discipline. Outside, the street was quiet. No photographers, no whispers, just peace. Then the mail arrived. A single white envelope with an embossed seal. The Veterans Fund confirmation letter. My estate amendment had been fully processed. $2 million directed to scholarships for military widows' education. I held the paper for a moment. My name, in black ink, underlined by law. That was the difference between grief and growth. A signature. At 7, Ryan arrived again, carrying a paint bucket and 2 brushes. "You said you wanted the porch rails done," he said. We painted in silence for a while. The harbor breeze carried the smell of salt and new beginnings. "Do you miss her?" I asked finally. He paused mid-stroke. "I miss who I thought she was." I nodded. "That's fair." He smiled faintly. "Do you forgive her?" "Forgiveness isn't letting her off the hook," I said. "It's unhooking myself." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something familiar. Resolve. "Mom," he said, "you turned pain into policy." I laughed. That's the military way. When we finished, he stood back, admiring the clean white railing. "Looks solid," he said. "So do you," I replied. He squeezed my hand. "Thanks for not giving up on me." "I almost did," I said. but I don't like unfinished missions." As twilight deepened, he drove off, and I sat on the porch steps, watching the first stars appear. Across the bay, church bells echoed faintly through the wind. I could still hear Claire's voice sometimes. Bitter, angry, small. But it no longer hurt. It only reminded me how far I'd come. Inside, I hung the silver compass above my desk. The needle pointed north, steady, certain. Under it, I placed a framed photo. Maria and I in uniform, smiling in front of a C-130 transport plane. Beneath it, a note I'd written that morning. "Justice isn't loud. It's lawful. It's final." I sat down, pen in hand, and wrote the last line of my report for the Veterans Fund. Mission complete, assets secured, lessons applied. Then I closed the ledger, turned off the desk lamp, and opened the window. The night air smelled of salt, magnolia, and freedom. In the distance, a ship horn sounded across the bay. I lifted my teacup toward the horizon and whispered, "Course corrected." The porch light glowed steady through the glass. The compass hung true. My heart, for the first time in years, was still, and for once, there was nothing left to defend. The letter came on a Tuesday morning, printed on heavy paper with the government seal pressed deep into the corner. Internal Revenue Service, Notice of Inquiry. For most people, those words mean fear. For me, they meant confirmation. I placed the envelope flat on the table, aligning it with the edge of my compass. Then I called Major Samuel Pike. "Major," I said, "they're coming." He chuckled softly. "Good, let them." By noon, we were sitting in my living room, the air steady and cool, everything arranged like a briefing room. Files labeled, receipts in clear sleeves, the Whitaker ledger on top, every amendment, every signature, every cent accounted for. At 1:07 p.m., 2 auditors arrived, a woman in a navy suit and a young man with a nervous smile. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, crisp but courteous, "we're reviewing financial activity related to the Donovan and Whitaker accounts." "Of course," I replied. "Please come in. The table's ready." They laid out their folders, murmuring to each other. The young man's pen trembled slightly as he opened the file. "Do you understand this may extend to your family members?" the woman asked. I smiled. "It already has." The doorbell rang. Ryan stood there, pale, holding another envelope. "Mom, Claire's name is all over the audit," he said quietly. "I know," I said. "Take a seat. This is your lesson in truth management." He sat beside Samuel, who gave him a reassuring nod. The auditors asked questions. I answered each one with documents, signatures, dates, no hesitation. "Clause 11, I said, sliding a page across the table. "Signed November 28th, notarized, filed within the legal amendment window." The woman adjusted her glasses. "This shows you removed both your son and daughter-in-law as co-trustees?" "Yes, ma'am." "On record, witnessed, sealed." "And these charitable transfers?" "Filed through the Veterans Education Fund. IRS reference code is on line 8. Ryan stared at the paper, whispering, "I never saw any of this." "That's because you didn't look," I said. The woman auditor nodded slowly. "This appears in order. The discrepancies, however, will be in the Donovan filings," I said calmly. "They used my estate's tax ID to funnel fake donations through her father's realty firm. You'll find those receipts in the Charleston Chronicle expose dated December 3rd. Saw it." Samuel handed over a folder labeled Media Record, Verified Evidence. Inside were screenshots, timestamps, and notarized statements. The woman blinked, impressed. "This is very thorough, Mrs. Whitaker." "I was trained to plan for contingencies," I said. "In the Air Force, we called it Mission Foresight." The young auditor glanced at Ryan. "Sir, did you authorize any of these transactions?" Ryan shook his head. "No, I was told it was standard procedure." "By your wife?" He hesitated, then nodded. The room fell silent. The tick of the clock sounded like punctuation. Then the woman closed her file. "Mrs. Whitaker, based on what we've reviewed, the inquiry will now shift entirely toward the Donovan accounts. You are officially cleared." Ryan exhaled, relief flooding his face. "Before you go," I said, standing. "There's one more document you should see." I opened the final folder. Addendum, Veterans Scholarship Confirmation. The check copies, already processed, glowed faintly in the light. "This," I said, "is where the $2.4 million ended. Every penny accounted for." The young man looked stunned. "You gave it away?" "I invested it," I corrected, "in people who won't misuse trust." The auditors exchanged glances, then stood. The woman extended her hand. "Mrs. Whitaker, it's been an honor." "Likewise," I said. "Justice likes clean tables." When the door closed behind them, Ryan sank into the chair. "Mom, that was procedure," I said. "Not performance." He rubbed his temples. "They'll charge her, won't they?" "They'll do their job. That's the point." He looked toward Samuel. "You knew she'd try to frame Mom?" Samuel smiled faintly. "Your mother knew it before Thanksgiving. I just followed her orders." Ryan laughed, half disbelief, half admiration. "You turned the whole thing around." I met his gaze. "I didn't turn it. I simply kept it upright." Then came the sound I'd been waiting for all day. A car screeching outside, a flurry of angry voices. Claire's. She stormed up the path, hair wild, face pale, still wearing her work badge. "You think you won?" she hissed, bursting into the yard. "You ruined my life!" I opened the door just enough for her to see the auditor's car leaving. "No, Claire," I said evenly. "You ruined your reputation. I simply submitted evidence." She stepped closer, trembling. "Everyone's talking about me, my clients, my friends." "Then they've finally learned what truth sounds like," I said. Her voice cracked. "You made me look like a criminal." "I didn't make you anything," I said. "I documented what you chose to be." Ryan stood in the doorway, frozen. "Claire, go home," he said softly. She turned on him. "You're siding with her now?" "I'm siding with reality," he said. Claire's eyes darted between us, searching for an ally and finding none. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll both regret this." I tilted my head. "I regret only one thing, Claire, that it took you this long to reveal yourself." She stepped back, shaking, eyes glassy with rage, then ran to her car and peeled away, tires screeching down the street. Samuel exhaled slowly. "That, Mrs. Whitaker, was one for the books." I smiled. "Every mission ends with debrief." Ryan sat again, his voice small. "I didn't know she was capable of that." "Now you do," I said, "and knowledge is freedom." The afternoon light slanted across the table, illuminating the compass. The needle stayed steady. The house was quiet again. No shouting, no chaos, only proof. Ryan reached for my hand. "Mom, I'm proud of you." I squeezed his fingers gently. "Be proud of truth, not me." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of magnolia and salt. I stood, opening the window. "You handled that perfectly," Samuel said. "I didn't handle it," I replied. "I prepared for it." The clock chimed 4. I closed the ledger, locked it in the cabinet, and whispered the same words I'd said since the beginning. Mission secure. The house exhaled with me. The compass glinted once in the fading sun, its needle fixed north, unwavering, exact. Tomorrow, the world would talk. But tonight, truth was already home. The Charleston Convention Hall glowed under 1,000 soft lights. The annual Veterans Gala had always been a quiet event, until this year. My name was on the program, printed in clean serif type. Nadine Whitaker. Keynote guest, distinguished service and civic contribution. I arrived in my navy blue suit, medals aligned, compass tucked neatly inside my pocket. The same compass that had led me through storms and shame alike. As I stepped into the ballroom, conversations paused for a heartbeat, then resumed in a low hum. Recognition carried through the air like static. A woman from the Charleston Chronicle approached first, microphone ready. "Mrs. Whitaker, is it true the Donovan family is under federal investigation because of your reports?" I smiled politely. "It's true the law did its job." She leaned forward. "And you were the whistleblower?" "I was the witness," I said. "There's a difference." Before she could ask another question, Major Samuel Pike appeared beside me, a steady anchor in his gray suit. "Evening, Major," I greeted. He nodded. "Evening, Colonel." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You've caused quite the storm." "Better a storm of truth than a calm built on lies," I replied. Across the room, people whispered. Some looked impressed, others wary. And at the far end of the hall, I saw them, the Donovans, Charles and Evelyn, dressed in black, faces tight. They hadn't been invited, but of course they came. The kind of people who think presence equals power. I didn't flinch. I simply adjusted my name tag and continued walking toward the stage. As the orchestra softened, the host called my name. Applause rippled through the crowd, hesitant at first, then fuller. I stepped onto the stage, heels clicking against polished wood, the spotlight warm on my face. I began simply. I was taught that service isn't about titles. It's about accountability. You can't serve your country and cheat your neighbor. You can't honor your flag and lie on your taxes. A quiet gasp moved through the audience. I could feel the Donovan's eyes burning holes in the back of the room. "I'm not here to expose anyone," I continued. "That part is already public record. I'm here to remind everyone that integrity doesn't expire when you retire. It either lives in your ledger or it doesn't." People straightened in their seats. The veterans nodded. A few reporters scribbled fast. Then I reached into my folder. "Tonight I'm not accepting any award," I said, holding up a set of signed documents. "Instead, I'm redirecting the recognition fund and an additional $4 million estate contribution to the Veterans Education Fund." Gasps again, this time louder. "Some inheritances weigh down generations. I prefer mine to lift others." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, catching my calm smile as I placed the signed papers on the podium. The sound of clapping filled the hall. Clean, unforced, like rain breaking a long drought. From the corner of my eye, I saw Evelyn Donovan rise halfway from her chair, face flushed. She whispered something to her husband, who yanked her arm down. Their empire had already crumbled. This was just the echo. As the applause subsided, I added, "Accountability is the purest form of gratitude. We owe it to those who never made it home, and to those who still believe honor is worth more than comfort." When I left the stage, the Chronicle reporter was waiting again, wide-eyed. "Mrs. Whitaker," she stammered, "did you just donate your entire estate?" "Not all of it," I said, "just the part that was poisoned." Samuel laughed under his breath. "You always did know how to deliver a clean strike." We walked toward the exit, the ballroom behind us bursting into chatter. People shook my hand, veterans saluted, strangers smiled. For once, the whispers weren't pity, they were respect. Outside, the Charleston air was cool, touched by sea salt. The night hummed with distant traffic and camera flashes. Samuel turned to me. "Do you think this ends it?" "Nothing ends," I said. "It just rebalances." Then a voice called out from behind. Ryan. He had arrived late, dressed in a simple black suit, no tie, holding a small envelope. "You didn't tell me you were speaking," he said, smiling shyly. "It wasn't about me," I replied. He handed me the envelope. "It's from the foundation. They want you on the advisory board." I raised an eyebrow. "You're on it too?" He nodded. "You helped me find my compass, Mom. I figured I should use it." We stood there a moment, silent. Across the parking lot, reporters swarmed the Donovan's car. The flash of cameras turned their silhouettes into frantic shapes. I felt no anger, only distance. Ryan followed my gaze. "She'll hate you forever." "She'll have time," I said, "and headlines." He laughed softly. "You're ruthless." "No," I said, "just thorough." The host's voice echoed faintly from inside, announcing the start of the auction. I could hear applause again, warm, hopeful, alive. Samuel extended his hand. "Come on, Colonel, let's get you home." As we walked to the car, I looked back once more. The light from the hall spilled out through the open doors, bathing the marble steps in gold. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt anchored, not by wealth or reputation, but by truth, filed, signed, sealed. The compass in my pocket pressed gently against my palm. The needle didn't waver, neither did I. When we reached the car, I paused. "Major," I said quietly, "tonight wasn't about revenge." He smiled. "I know, it was about course correction." I nodded, watching the city lights shimmer across the harbor. "Justice never needs an audience," I said, "but sometimes it deserves a spotlight." Then I stepped into the car, the gala's applause fading behind me, replaced by the quiet hum of the engine and the certainty of north. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that no longer felt like absence, just peace. The morning after the gala, I brewed my tea, steady hands, no rush. The newspaper lay on the table beside my compass, headlines already bold. Veteran donates 2.4 M estate at gala. The room stood still. Below, a smaller headline. Donovan family faces criminal probe for fraud. I folded the paper in half. No satisfaction, no anger, just closure. Then I opened my desk drawer and took out the blue stationery I'd kept sealed for weeks. The letter had waited until now. Its title, written in clean ink, "To my son." I began simply. "Ryan, there are wars you fight with weapons and wars you fight with silence. You've seen me in both. One takes strength, the other takes restraint." The pen glided easily. My hands didn't shake. I never wanted to humiliate anyone, not even her, but I couldn't allow deceit to carry our name. Honor isn't an inheritance, Ryan. It's a practice. And you don't protect it by hiding from conflict. You protect it by standing still when chaos hits. I paused, sipped my tea. The house creaked softly in the wind. The magnolia outside brushed against the window like an old friend tapping hello. "Do you remember the compass I gave you when you turned 16? You said it didn't work. That's because you didn't trust it. It never pointed where you wanted to go, only where you should. That's how truth works too." I underlined truth. The ink bled slightly, not a flaw, just evidence of pressure. "You asked me once if I regret joining the military. I don't. It taught me that emotions don't outrank principles. When you understand that, life stops feeling random. Every decision aligns: duty, family, self-respect." I set the pen down. Outside, I heard footsteps, a car door. Then a knock. Two slow, one quick. Ryan's pattern. He stepped inside, still in yesterday's suit, but his face looked lighter. "Mom," he said, holding a small paper bag. "Breakfast." I smiled. "Reporting for duty again?" He laughed, setting 2 pastries on the table. "The bakery girl insisted I take the fresh ones. She said you're a legend." Word travels fast. He sat across from me, eyes scanning the folded newspaper headline. "It's everywhere. People are calling you the quiet hurricane." "I've been called worse," I said. He hesitated. "Claire called me last night." I didn't move. "And?" "She said she's leaving Charleston. Her parents are broke. They might face charges." I looked at him carefully. "Do you pity her?" He exhaled. "A little, but not enough to forget." "Then you're learning." He nodded, then noticed the letter on the table. "Is that for me?" "Yes, but you can read it later. After breakfast." He unfolded his napkin, then stopped. "Mom, I need to say something first." I raised an eyebrow. "You're starting to sound like a man rehearsed." He smiled faintly. I want to thank you for not letting me drown in her story." I took a slow sip of tea. "You were never the story, Ryan. You were the lesson." He blinked, caught between guilt and relief. "And what was the lesson?" "That love without truth is just decoration." He looked down, then nodded slowly. "You really mean that, don't you?" I had to. We ate quietly. The tea steamed between us. The world outside carried on. Cars, gulls, the hum of Charleston waking up. When we finished, he pushed his plate away. "Mom, you should publish that speech. The gala one." People need to hear it. I already filed it, I said. With the Veterans Fund archives. Always one step ahead. Always. He reached for the letter again. May I? I nodded. He unfolded it carefully, reading the lines in silence. His eyes slowed near the middle. After a minute, he looked up. You wrote, "Honor doesn't retire." It doesn't, I said. Neither do mothers. He smiled. Not the nervous kind, not the broken one, but steady, grateful. Then he folded the letter and slipped it into his jacket pocket like it was something sacred. I'll keep it, he said quietly, for good. Do more than keep it, I said. Live it. He stood, kissed my forehead, and walked toward the door. Halfway through, he turned back. You're free now, you know. I shook my head. Freedom isn't the prize, it's the responsibility. He smiled. You always have the last line. Someone has to, I said. When the door closed behind him, I sat back, listening to the fading echo of his steps. Then I looked down at the compass beside my cup. The needle quivered slightly before settling true north. I whispered, Course confirmed. The morning light spilled across the table, catching the silver rim of my compass, the folded newspaper, the empty teacup, and the quiet pride on my face. I picked up another blank sheet of paper, wrote 3 words, and set it aside for tomorrow's task. Final estate letter. Outside, the magnolia leaves flickered in the wind, scattering soft shadows on the porch rail. A rhythm steady as breath. No chaos, no noise, just order, earned, and exact. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a soldier waiting for orders. I felt like one who'd completed them. Spring stretched over Charleston like a quiet salute. The city was softer now. Fewer headlines, fewer whispers, more light. I opened my windows early, letting the breeze sweep through the curtains. It smelled of salt and magnolia. Clean air. Earned air. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. The papers were filed, the estate sealed, the past officially archived. On the mantel sat my compass, polished, steady, its needle unwavering. I had one last errand. At 10 sharp, I walked to the Veterans Resource Center, where the new scholarship recipients gathered for their orientation. The walls smelled faintly of paint and fresh hope. Young faces, some anxious, some proud, looked up as I entered. Good morning, I said, setting my folder down. I'm Nadine Whitaker, retired Air Force logistics, your new mentor. A few hands shot up in salute, others waved shyly. One girl in the front row whispered, You're the lady from the news. I smiled. I'm the lady who believes numbers don't lie, and neither should people. Laughter rippled lightly through the room. We spent 2 hours going through basics: financial management, ethical contracting, how to refuse offers that smell too sweet. They took notes furiously, the way soldiers learn to handle instructions: precise, disciplined, ready. When the session ended, a boy lingered behind. His name tag read, Marcus. Ma'am, he said, why'd you give it all away? The money, I mean. I looked at him. Earnest eyes, same tone I'd once heard from Ryan decades ago. Because it wasn't mine to hoard, I said. It was mine to redirect. He frowned slightly. So you don't miss it? I smiled. Not for a second. Things don't build legacy. Choices do. He nodded slowly, as if memorizing that line for later use. Thank you, ma'am. When he left, I stayed a moment longer, watching sunlight cut across the floor, lighting the plaques, the flags, the framed photo of soldiers I once knew. Some were gone, but their discipline never left me. At noon, I locked the door behind me and walked home along the harbor. The tide was high, calm, reflecting the sky like polished glass. Charleston shimmered quietly, all brick, iron, and second chances. Ryan's car was already parked out front. He was repainting the porch railing again, humming off-key, sleeves rolled up, paint flecks on his forearm. You missed a spot, I said, stepping onto the porch. He grinned. You always say that. And you always do. He laughed, setting the brush down. You get the scholarship list? Approved and funded, I said. First 4 students start next month. That's incredible, Mom. I shrugged. It's paperwork. The world runs on it. He leaned against the post, eyes soft. You know, you don't have to keep fixing everything. I tilted my head. That's what commanders do. He smiled faintly. You're retired, remember? Command doesn't retire, I said. It just changes ranks. We sat down with tea. 2 mugs, 2 chairs, porch light off, but sun bright enough to make it unnecessary. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. Do you think I'll ever stop feeling guilty? I looked at him carefully. Guilt is a compass, too. It only hurts when you try to ignore it. He nodded, staring at the horizon. Claire's gone. She moved out of state. Let her, I said. Some people only learn when they're alone with their consequences. He sighed. You really forgave her, didn't you? Forgiveness isn't for her peace, I said. It's for mine. He looked down, then smiled. You always know exactly what to say. No, I said quietly. I just learned what not to repeat. A breeze lifted the edge of the newspaper on the porch table. The same headline from weeks ago stared up. Justice served, quietly. I picked it up, folded it neatly, and tucked it into a small cedar box beneath the compass. Inside were a few mementos: Maria's photo, my service patch, a sealed letter labeled Final Instructions. Ryan watched me. You're writing again? Just finishing, I said. Everything needs a proper record. He reached for the compass, turning it in his hands. Still points north. Always will, I said. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't drift. He placed it back carefully. You ever think about what's next? I looked at the bay, sunlight scattering across the water like silver threads. Peace, that's next. But not the kind that hides, the kind that holds. He nodded slowly, understanding more than I'd expected. You earned it, Mom, I smiled. No one earns peace, Ryan. We just stop fighting it. He laughed softly. You know, for someone who hates drama, you sure lived a movie. I didn't live a movie, I said. I lived an audit. That made him laugh harder. I joined in. The sound felt new, clean, honest. When he left that evening, I stayed on the porch. The sky turned pink, the water gold, and somewhere far out a ship's horn moaned, long, low, final. I rose, stepped inside, and hung the silver compass above my desk. Its needle steadied, perfectly north. Beneath it, I placed my last note for the Veterans Fund. Justice hadn't made me young again, but it had set my course true. Then I turned off the lamp, letting twilight fill the room. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed gently, petals falling like soft metals on the grass. I breathed in deep, the scent of closure. The door stayed open, just a few inches, enough for air and peace to pass through freely. And as the compass caught the last light of day, I whispered to the empty room, mission complete. The house was silent again, but not the silence of loss, the silence of order restored. True north held steady, and so did I. End.